has failed to offer a legitimate opposition.
Jeremy Corbyn is bottling it. He can't make up his mind even now on where he stands. And as Liberal Democrat leader, I have to take the place and, provide the real opposition that our country needs.
In other headlines this hour, President Trump is being criticised for calling a majority black area represented by an opponent as a disgusting rat and rodent-infested mess. The US president's comments are aimed at his rival, Democrat Representative Elijah Cummings, who is black. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, is among those condemning his remarks. Scott Lucas, Professor of International Politics at the University of Birmingham, has told LBC President Trump's target is currently investigating his finances.
Elijah Cummings is the head of the Oversight Committee in the House of Representatives. They're investigating Trump's tax returns and allegations that Trump has misused the office for financial gain and even may have committed tax fraud.
It's feared there could be further violence in Hong Kong, where pro-democracy protests have been held for several weekends. Campaigners are opposed to a bill which has been suspended indefinitely that would have enabled extraditions to mainland China. Yesterday, police and demonstrators clashed with officers firing tear gas into crowds during a banned march. Passengers using East Midlands trains are still being told not to use the line between London St Pancras, Nottingham and Sheffield. Engineers are still trying to repair overhead wires. Network Rail's blaming the recent hot temperatures for what it describes as extensive damage. Cyclist Egan Bernal is expected to become the youngest winner of the Tour de France in 110 years later. The 22-year-old holds the yellow jersey going into the final stage. LBC weather. Heavy rain across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, North Wales, northwest England, the Midlands and East Anglia. Dry elsewhere, a high of 23 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Philip Chrysikos.
National Lottery, Michelle speaking.
You got the long ticket number?
Amazing. Let me check that for you.
Are you sitting down?
I can confirm that is £1.17 million.
It's going to change everything. That's just the game changer. Oh, I'm a new grandfather and we're going to change our children's lives with this.
I'm so happy for you. Congratulations.
Someone has to win. Why not you? The National Lottery. Amazing starts here. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Good morning, everybody. Well, I have to say, what a start Boris Johnson has made. Speeches of Downing Street, speeches in the House of Commons, visits to Manchester, barely a jammer or a stammer or a ruffle of the hair, a very different looking, disciplined Boris. Very positive, very, very positive. We are leaving on the 31st of October, do or die, and there's going to be money for the North. And he's made some appointments, and I have to say, compared to the sheer negativity of the last 3 years, which at times I think has been dire, in terms of style, there's no question he has made a very good start. Now, today's newspapers are absolutely full of no-deal Brexit talk. Michael Gove telling us it's a real possibility. Sajid Javid, the Chancellor, about to spend a lot of money getting ready for a no-deal Brexit, including the prospect, and this is a wonderful counter to David Cameron, the prospect of a leaflet going through every house in the country telling us why we should not be worried about leaving with no deal on the 31st of October. We could call it Project No Fear, I suppose, and quite amusing to think that one Etonian Prime Minister would do this to counter what was done by a previous Etonian Prime Minister. But no, it is in style very, very good. The substance of this, well, it'll play out. Does Boris really believe in a no-deal Brexit? I don't think so. I think it's all actually a big negotiating position with the European Union. It's just the kind of thing Trump would do. The art of the deal. You pitch in hard, you pitch in high, you're then prepared to start compromising. And are Brussels going to compromise? Well, we will, during the course of this hour, talk to the Times Brussels correspondent Bruno Waterfield, a man that knows the European Commission well. But I thought I'd begin today looking at the Boris bounce, because in the opinion polls the Tories are up between 6 and 10%. It all rather depends which polling company you look at, and it all rather depends what date and timeline you're comparing the previous poll with. But either way, the Conservatives now appear to be up around 30%. That's a lot more. I mean, they've been languishing in the low 20s for a considerable period of time. And of course, don't forget that on the 23rd of May, the European elections, they finished up with less than 10% of the vote in that election. So this is better. This is a positive start. And I'm going to be asking you over the course of the next hour, are you attracted to what Boris has said and done in the last few days? Are you one of these people who's returned to the Conservative fold? Or maybe you're one, actually, that's left and gone to the Lib Dems because you think they're too Brexity. But before we do any of that, earlier on this morning, I thought, well, who better to talk to about the Boris bounce than the father of the Prime Minister, Stanley Johnson? And I began by asking him whether I should refer to him as the first father.
Well, you could. But I'd like to think, Nigel, I've actually done a few other things in my life, 26 books, a few jobs.
No, you certainly have. And of course, you've been an MEP, so you've been in politics yourself. How does it feel to have a son who is the Prime Minister?
Well, of course, it is absolutely superb. I mean, I feel tremendously proud. I don't think it happens to a great number of people to watch their sons become Prime Minister. I mean, I must admit, there are obviously a few of them around. I think David Cameron was one, maybe Tony Blair was certainly one. But they're not. They'll have more. Gladstone became Prime Minister last time at the age of 80. I don't think his father was around. So yes, I'm absolutely. Of course, it's a slightly bittersweet moment for me, Nigel, because I did start off very much as a Remainer. In the referendum, I campaigned for Remain, but once we voted in June 2016, to leave with 17.4 million votes on that site, I said to myself, well, that's what it is. Vox populi, vox dei. The people have spoken. We all got to get on with it. So bittersweet in a funny way, but of course with sweetness very much the dominant motive.
And Boris has made, by all accounts, a pretty good start. But do you think, given that there's almost no parliamentary majority, given some of the difficulties that still exist within the Conservative Party, can he deliver this? He's got less than 100 days.
Well, I'm pretty confident he will. In fact, I'm more than confident. I'd take money on it. I put bets on it, because one thing is absolutely clear to me, and when he says no ifs and buts, I think he means it. And everything I can see, and I have no special information, no privileged access, I can tell you, but everything I see leads me to suppose that he is as solid as a rock on this commitment that Britain will come out on October the 31st, on or before October the 31st this year. And I think what has changed in the whole perspective, and you probably see this much closer than I do, what has changed, I think, is this message will get across to our European colleagues. And I think, personally, we will see a big change in their view as they realize the irony of the situation. Here they are, for example, pushing the Irish backstop with a view to, as it were, protecting Ireland from a hard border. And in fact, the one thing which is really going to throw Ireland under the bus, is having a no deal Brexit, which seems to be being forced upon us. So honestly, I think that there has to be a change. That doesn't mean there isn't work to do, Nigel, by our diplomats. And I think that lots of contacts are going on, obviously with the embassies in this country. But we need to be sure that our diplomats are really trying in the nation states, because you know better than I do.
Oh, I agree.
As well as I do, it's the nation states which in the end will determine the policy in Brussels.
And this has been the failure for the last 3 years, Stanley. I said the week after the referendum, we should be going out all across Europe, putting pressure on those governments to say to Brussels, look, come to a grown-up deal. And I hope that work is going on. But if it really came to it, and if Brussels were not prepared to give enough for the House of Commons to pass a withdrawal agreement, how damaging do you feel that a no-deal Brexit would be?
Well, I just pick up that point. We will have a no-deal Brexit. If a vote, other things being equal, that is the default position. And I'm honestly not one of those people who say, "Wow, this is going to be a total a total disaster. Well, it might be a disaster from the EU's point of view. They export to us much more than we export to them. It might be a disaster, will be a disaster possibly from Ireland's point of view. But I go back to the May 1940 situation. Who was it who said London can take it or Britain can take it?
Stanley, you sound like a leaver these days.
I am a leaver. I told you I am a leaver, because that's what that's why I said to you, Nigel. Vox populi, vox Dei. I am a leaver. And do you know something? I've been rereading recently, would you believe it, a biography of Gateskill. I was reading his speech in October 1962 to the Brighton Labour Party conference. And do you know something? He was an incredibly clever and brilliant man. And he said, look, there is really a strong case for thinking twice before going into Europe. And I think in a way we've got the obverse of that situation now. There is real merit on the Leave side, and in any case, regardless of the fact of that merit, as I said before, the people have spoken. It is up to us to deliver it. We can't have a situation where it's Parliament versus the people.
Has Boris persuaded you of all of this, Stanley?
This is my situation. I am absolutely ready to believe that this is the right route at this moment. I really am. I cannot imagine how this country could survive more and years after year of continued. I mean, you have another referendum, and then what happens? You have an unchanged arithmetic in the Parliament. You have the same thing all over again. I can't see this. Now, what Boris has offered, and you know this, he's offered a very clear deal to our European partners. A standstill as far as trade and tariffs are concerned, remit the whole question of the Irish backstop and frictionless trade to the second go-round. Okay, we keep up some payments, that's absolutely fine, and we do a deal on citizenship and so on. It's a pretty straightforward deal, and actually it seems to me just a matter of stubbornness on the part of Mr. Juncker and Mr. Barnier at the moment. It's almost as though pride is involved. It's like a First World War situation. Both sides are armed, and in the end, we're going to have a war by accident.
Well, I wonder, an amended withdrawal agreement, would that get through the House of Commons? That will be the big question, won't it?
I do know something. I think anything which would get through the House of Commons would need to be a pretty radical departure from the withdrawal agreement. It would, I think it would be a pretty unrecognisable withdrawal agreement. It would, as I say, merely be an exit departure, but an agreed exit, but with, some clear commitments for the future.
Well, Stanley Johnson, I never ever thought I'd hear him say there's real merit on the Leave side. He appears to be this Damascene convert. But as he says, it's because we voted for it and it needs to be delivered, and he thinks Boris is going to deliver it. So, has Prime Minister Johnson attracted you back to the Tories? I want to see your messages coming in. I get this one, anonymously. It's been non-stop personal attacks on Prime Minister Johnson. I'm sick of you, Farage. You're constantly attacking him. No, I'm not. I've just said I think he's made a very good start. I think in terms of style and optimism, it's miles better than what we had before. And I have to say, being in the north of England yesterday and talking about the need to regenerate the north. I mean, goodness me, I spent nearly the whole of the European election campaign in the north of England saying these things. He's taken many things out of our playbook from the Brexit party. I can't be unhappy about that. I mean, nothing could be more flattering. Look, let me make this clear. I wish him well. I want him to deliver Brexit on the 31st of October. But, and this is the but, if he is going to go to Brussels, get some changes to the withdrawal agreement, and then put that before the House of Commons and say the backstop's been removed, or there's a time limit to the backstop, so this withdrawal agreement is now fine. It isn't. It isn't in any way. The withdrawal agreement, even without the backstop, is still the worst deal in history. I don't want the withdrawal agreement reheated. I want us to leave with a clean break Brexit. And if Boris delivers that, he will be a hero for all time. The question is, does he really believe in leaving with no deal, or is it a negotiating tactic? You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's 10:15.
This is LBC.
LBC, along with Lloyds Bank, the people behind the M word, are encouraging couples to talk about money together and discussing why money is the ultimate British taboo.
Recognising there's a problem in the first place is your starting point, and so that's often associated with suddenly there's more tension when you're wanting to spend money or get something, and you start noticing some of the signs are building up.
Head to lbc.co.uk for details on the M word from Lloyds Bank, making those conversations about money easier. LBC.
Switch to BT Business Broadband today and get connected tomorrow. Our most reliable broadband connection yet is backed by our 4G network and now comes with a fixed price guarantee, which means your connection won't go down and our prices won't go up. Whatever your business, go online and search BT Business Broadband to find out more. BT, be there. Subject to availability. Fixed price guarantee for your contract duration. T's and C's apply.
We've created unlimited data plans for your business because 1 minute you're the receptionist.
Hello, how can I help?
The logistics manager.
Okay, lift at your end. That's it now, to me.
The new business consultant.
Will do. I'll pop over and give you a quote.
And you've still got to make the tea. Your business doesn't have limits, so why should your data allowance? New unlimited data plans from Vodafone Business. The future is exciting. Ready?
Max download upload speed apply to data. Coverage may vary. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/terms.
Hey, you know what they say. Go big or go home. So get yourself to Big Motoring World for up to 2,000 used BMWs, Audis, Mercedes, VWs, Nissans, Fords, Vauxhalls, Peugeots, Fiats, Mitsubishis, Citroens, Hondas. Oh, I know that's a big list, but I already told you. Go big or go home. See bigmotoringworld.co.uk or find them minutes from the M25. Hit it, ladies.
Big Motoring World.
Right, team. Any ideas on where we should advertise our delicious new chicken sauce? But quack! Beth?
We could talk to people while they're cooking.
No one reads a newspaper while they're cooking. It goes all soggy.
I was actually thinking of radio.
Radio?
Yes. People often listen to it while they're doing something else. And if the ad's related to what they're doing, it can really boost results.
Sounds like a recipe for success. Hey?
To find out more about advertising on LBC, text the word radio to 81156.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
A Boris bounce in the polls. It's undeniable. Are you one of those people attracted by what Boris has said and done in the next few days? Maybe you're somebody who thinks, nope, they're too Brexit for me. I'm going to go and support the Lib Dems. Or maybe you're one of those people who lost so much faith in the Conservative Party that you say, well, it's all well and good Boris saying this, but didn't Theresa May do the same thing? Didn't Theresa May tell us that no deal is better than a bad deal? Didn't Theresa May tell us 108 times that we're leaving on the 29th of March? And are you waiting and saying, OK, if he delivers, fine, but I'm not sure yet? Well, certainly Cathy in Southampton is in that latter category. Nigel, I don't want to comment until after the 31st of October. Seeing is believing. Nigel, it's the hope that kills us. I never can forgive or forget everything May and her Remainers have said and done, says Christopher from Malvern. Ian, though, takes a different view. I've rejoined the Tories after 5 years. I made a large donation and really appreciate your approach to Boris. Ian, thank you. I personally believe that Brexit is not just the defining issue of our age, but actually it's the most important political project of my lifetime. I believe we're going to be far better off as an independent country. And it's not parties that matter to me, it's getting Brexit above all that matters to me. Let's go to Dartford and speak to Steve. Steve, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, sir. I'm a Conservative Party member.
Yes.
I, in the end, voted for Boris. I attended a very interesting meeting at Dartford Conservative Club during the hustings, attended by one Jacob Rees-Mogg, where he came to speak to us to tell us why we should vote for Brexit, for Boris, slip of the tongue. And many of us had to admit in the meeting that we voted for the Brexit Party at the European elections. And I said to Mr. Rees-Mogg, why was it that Boris said he wanted to put Nigel Farage, quote, back in his box, unquote. And Jacob said that the first thing to note was that there was a great deal more respect privately for one N. Farage within the highest reaches of the Conservative Party privately that they could not admit in public because you're the leader of an alternative political party. But large numbers of them, he said, believe absolutely as strongly as you do in the idea of Britain becoming once again an independent, self-governing country. And that Boris, he said, was the man to do this, because if he wasn't, then Jacob would not be supporting him. So in the end, I persuaded myself to vote for Boris, and I'm delighted with the start he's made. But so far, it's all mouth, inevitably, because we're in the very early stages, and I'm hoping that it's not all mouth and trousers. My vote in the next election will probably go to our local Conservative MP, because he deserves it. He's a leaver, and he was the lad who, you may recall, last December resigned as a junior whip in order to vote against Mrs May's first attempt at the submission agreement. I don't know whether you remember that.
Yeah, and where was he by the third vote?
He stuck to his guns. I'm pretty sure, at least I think he stuck to his guns.
Okay, but I say that because Boris didn't, did he? I mean, Steve...
No, Boris didn't.
This is the problem, Steve, isn't it?
It is the problem, and I'm sitting here hoping. I know relatives of mine who say, sorry, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, shame on you, I'm sticking with the Brexit party. But my decision's made a little bit easier by the electoral arithmetic in Dartford. Conservatives first, Labour second, UKIP third at each of the last two general elections. I move my vote to the Brexit party. I am at risk of letting that bunch of anti-Semitic communists in, and I won't do it.
Well, the opposite is true, Steve, in some other parts of the country, isn't it? I mean, the Peterborough by-election was an example. But Steve, listen, let me ask you one final thing, and thank you for talking us through that. And Jacob obviously was quite influential in deciding where you... And Jacob, I know, was going around the country working very, very hard on Boris's behalf.
I think he did 3 meetings that day in different parts of North Kent.
Jacob really has put his back into this. And he's been rewarded, of course, being leader of the House. And I have to say, what a fantastic start he made at the dispatch box. I mean, he looked like he'd been there the whole of his life.
It was magnificent. I just keep laughing every time I watch the recording.
I mean, very good. But, Steve, what Boris is doing, and he's got no choice, he is marching his army up to the top of the hill.
Yep.
And the hill is one, you could argue, that I define, not him. You know, the 39 billion if we leave with no deal and all the rest of it. What happens, Steve, to your party if we don't leave on the 31st of October?
I think the answer is it depends on the circumstances. If we fail to leave on the 31st of October because Boris has cravenly given in and presented us with the submission agreement with a few twiddles, they're finished. They're finished. The Tory party will never get my vote again.
Well, I fear, Steve, he's going to try to come back with this withdrawal agreement, but let's see. Steve, great call. Thank you very much indeed for talking us through that. And interesting, I do actually genuinely think that Jacob Rees-Mogg over the course of the last year has been quite influential behind Boris getting a vote as substantial as it was. Sam from Mortimer says, I spoiled my paper in the leadership contest, but now I feel reinvigorated within the party. The new cabinet is largely fantastic, and this government has made a very encouraging start. Small state Conservative policies, here we come. Oh, I'll believe the small state stuff, Sam, when I see it, I have to tell you. Nigel is a first-time caller from Morecambe up in Lancashire. Nigel, good morning to you.
Good morning to you, sir.
So, how do you think Boris has done, and has he persuaded you that he's worth supporting?
I think he's done exceptionally well. I think he's presented a can-do, positive, really enthusiastic image for the future of Britain. But, having said that, I was a lifelong Tory voter. I'm now a member of the Brexit Party and quite proud of it. I voted Brexit for every time since it's been in existence. And quite frankly, I would not go back to the Conservative Party again. I just cannot trust them.
So it's a matter of trust, is it?
It is a matter of trust, yeah. I think May and the whole Brexit charade and the 109 times that were also so knowledgeable, that just finished me off as far as the Tory party are concerned. And in fact, the Brexit Party is the first party I've ever joined in 61 years.
Wow.
So that's how convinced I was of your arguments.
And do you think Boris will deliver, or do you think it's going to be a little bit like Mrs May last time round? Lots of promises and no delivery.
Good point. I honestly think he's going to try to deliver. But I think he's up against a really big hurdle in Europe. and I'm very doubtful he'll be able to do it. I hope he does, for all our sakes, but I don't think he's going to, and I'm going to remain with the Brexit Party.
OK, Nigel, thank you very much indeed. I get here, I voted for Corbyn originally, then voted Leave in the referendum. I'm on the left politically, but Brexit is my most important issue. Boris has swayed me. The social care pledge is key, with services being eroded since the time of Blair. I hope I'm not being hoodwinked. I hope I'm not being sold a pup, says James in Suffolk. And yeah, you know, actually, Boris has talked about other things, hasn't he? He has talked about social care. He has talked about infrastructure, reinvigoration of the north. In fact, he's made 20,000 police officers. I mean, he's made a whole host of promises. None of it costed that I can see, but he has made a lot of promises. Mary is calling from Hemel Hempstead. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Nigel. I have to say that Boris has put a smile on my face. Now, I was a Conservative member, and in fact, I didn't realise, and I was eager to vote for him in the leadership thing.
Right.
I've got reservations. My experience of life, now I'm 82 now, my experience of life is that people who talk a lot about what they're going to do very little. I find people who don't talk about it very much.
Interesting.
And what worries me is the fact that he's got 19 Remainers in his cabinet.
Yeah, it's a point, Mary, no one's making, because we see some of the big appointments and they're Brexiteers, but you're right, there are still more Remainers in the cabinet than there are Leavers, and it's something, Mary, the Sunday papers haven't noticed.
You see, I would have thought, like for a defence secretary, for example, they would have had somebody like Johnny Mercer, been in the army, knows the ins and outs of it. There's James Carrington down in West Country, Drax. That's it. I think his name's
Richard Drax, yeah, from Dorset, yeah.
I think he's very good, but none of these were put in there, and they've been consistently on about leave. And I just worry a bit why there are so many Remainers in cabinet.
Well, I suppose that Boris still has to command the parliamentary Conservative Party, and if he was seen to have ditched all of the Remainers, he might have a problem. I mean, basically half the parliamentary Conservative Party voted Leave and half voted Remain. So
but you see, we're now following a policy of leaving. It's been confirmed that we've got to leave, right? So there's 33 members in the cabinet, I believe. But that's over half are Remainers.
Yeah, I know. Mary, he's got almost no majority in Parliament. He's got people now like Philip Hammond sitting up there on the back benches who are vehemently opposed to a clean break Brexit. I guess he's got to play some party politics. Mary, I take the point. Thank you for the call. Nicola from Rains Park says, Boris's optimism and energy and bright mood are a breath of fresh air. And this was the word that President Trump used to me directly. Energy. Boris has got the energy that the country needs. That was the President of the USA's view. Let's go to Alex in Birmingham. Good morning, Alex.
Hi, good morning, Nigel. Nice to speak to you. Congratulations on your party and everything that you've done.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. So what about Boris?
I think that it's a complete farce, in all honesty. I've got lots of respect for Boris. He's a very intelligent man. He knows exactly what he's doing. And unlike anyone else in the House of Commons, he's a chess player. Everything that he does, he's 10 moves ahead of everyone. For instance, when he sat there, when Jeremy Corbyn was mouthing off, saying everything he said, he sat there saying nothing. And then when it came to his turn to speak, he absolutely destroyed him because he's got intelligence behind him. He's 10 moves ahead of everyone. And the whole Brexit's been a farce. Cameron went there. The idea of it has been to give the people this choice that, this is your choice, when really we were going to leave anyway. When he went there and they said no to him, the plan has been in place to make it look so bad. They put Theresa May in a Remainer, which was bizarre, if you must admit, to lead us out of it.
Odd.
And then at the end of the day, we've now got Boris in, who should have been in the first place. But the reason for it is if you make something look so bad and so much of a cock-up, that when someone like Boris comes in full of energy, the people will rally behind him. And that's the point of it, was to get the people on board.
I don't know. Alex, will he deliver?
I think he will. I think the plan's always been to deliver Brexit.
Okay.
I think that it's not going to be on a deal. It will be on a no deal. And this is the whole point of it, is to be on a no-deal Brexit.
Alex, I tell you what, I'll believe it when I see it. I really, really hope it happens, but I'll believe it when I see it. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's now 10:30 and time for the news with Philip Chrysikos.
The Prime Minister's father, Stanley Johnson, has told LBC his son is solid as a rock and is resolved to deliver a no-deal Brexit if the European Union refuses to renegotiate.
It seems to me just a matter of stubbornness on the part of Mr. Juncker and Mr. Barnier at the moment. It's almost as though pride is involved. It's like a First World War situation. Both sides are armed and armed and armed, and in the end, we're going to have a war by accident.
This morning, Boris Johnson's Chancellor Sajid Javid is releasing millions of pounds in no-deal Brexit spending in what's being dubbed Project No Fear. Separately, Jeremy Corbyn says he's not worried in the slightest about going up against the Prime Minister if there's a snap general election. The Labour leader adds his party is absolutely gearing up for one, but Liberal Democrat leader Joe Swinton is accusing Mr Corbyn of failing to offer a legitimate opposition. LBC weather: heavy rain across Northern Ireland, South West Scotland, North Wales, North West England, the Midlands and East Anglia. Dry elsewhere, a high of 23 degrees.
This is LBC.
LBC, along with Lloyds Bank, the people behind the M word, are encouraging couples to talk about money together and discussing why money is the ultimate British taboo.
Recognising there's a problem in the first place is your starting point, and so that's often associated with suddenly there's more tension when you're wanting to spend money or get something, and you start noticing some of the signs are building up.
Head to lbc.co.uk for details on the M word from Lloyds Bank, making those conversations about money easier. LBC.
Sheila Fogarty, Monday to Friday from 1 p.m.
I'm reflecting on what whistleblowers have said and asking people if they understand what anti-Semitism is. And let me finish my point, if you would. Just that phrase you used, I'm sorry, I think you're teetering on the edge there, Charlie. Why are they Israeli if they're born in, I don't know, Bracknell and happen to be Jewish?
Because it's not me, it's what you guys are saying.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you about the words that came out of your mouth.
Sheila Fogarty.
With Blink Home security cameras, helping give your family peace of mind.
LBC.
With OneNet on Vodafone Business, you can make and receive landline calls from your mobile, meaning your office could be here. Or here. Or more likely, here.
Hello, Saunders Designs. How can I help?
Your office can be anywhere with our OneNet virtual landline. Available on our new and limited data plans. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone Business.
Max download upload speeds apply to data. Coverage may vary. Unlimited and OneNet terms at vodafone.co.uk/terms.
Switch to BT Business Broadband today and get connected tomorrow. Our most reliable broadband connection yet is backed by our 4G network and now comes with a fixed price guarantee, which means your connection won't go down and our prices won't go up. Whatever your business, go online and search BT Business Broadband to find out more. BT, be there. Subject to availability. Fixed price guarantee for your contract duration. T's and C's apply.
Lunch. Lunch. What are the options looking like? Apparently, every lunch hour we polish off 70,000 bowls of soup. Yawnsville. What about crispy chicken and bacon smothered with smoky barbecue sauce, cool mayo, not forgetting tomato and lettuce, all rolled up in a soft toasted tortilla wrap?
AKA the barbecue and bacon chicken one. Today's $1.99 wrap of the day at McDonald's. Live your best lunch. Served after 10:30am, participating restaurants only, subject to availability, rest of range available at regular price.
Will you be a winner in the Mail's £1 million summer giveaway? Continuing in this weekend's The Mail on Sunday, get double Nectar points today. There's £1,000 in cash to be won every single day, and £10,000 worth of lottery tickets every week. Plus, you could win a wonderful trip of a lifetime world cruise worth over £30,000. The Mail's £1 million summer giveaway. Continuing in this weekend's The Mail on Sunday. My club, my rewards, my Mail.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Now, there are many Brexiteers, many MPs, many voters who felt that Theresa May's approach to the negotiators in Brussels was too weak, and Boris has started off in a war of words with the European Commission and their negotiators. He wants the backstop ditched, he wants it abolished, and in response to this, Jean-Claude Juncker, the boss boss of the European Commission, has said, look, this is the best and only agreement possible. Michel Barnier was critical of Boris, said that he'd been combative and that it was an attempt to crack the EU's unity and that they would reject the UK's demand to get rid of the backstop. And I just wonder, all this talk in today's papers about no deal, about preparations being stepped up, is it all part of a negotiating position? Is Boris's real desire to get some fundamental change to the withdrawal agreement and then try and get it through the House of Commons? And the question is, how likely is this? And joining me to give a view is an expert insider from Brussels, Bruno Waterfield, the Brussels correspondent for The Times. Good morning, Bruno.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning. So, have Brussels been surprised by Johnson's approach?
I think they have been surprised at the rhetoric. They kind of hoped that he'd do a sort of Margaret Thatcher, St Francis of Assisi moment on the steps of Downing Street, where there is discord, I will bring harmony, all that kind of stuff. And he hasn't. And so over the summer, they will be waiting and seeing. They'll be waiting to see what he says when he meets, as we presume, Leo Varadkar, the Irish Prime Minister, President Macron, whether it's at Chequers or at Bragasson, Macron's summer retreat, and Angela Merkel and the rest of it. And then they'll have more of a sense of it. I think at the moment they think a lot of it is a bluff. A lot of it is about putting pressure on them to crack. As my daughter, you can hear.
That's all right. She's very welcome to the show, Bruno. No problem at all.
So I think they're going to wait and see. They think that they're prepared for no-deal Brexit. That's their line. They've taken various unilateral measures to mitigate the worst of it for their economies, they argue. So I think we'll wait and see. I think August will be quiet. No doubt some more rhetoric from London and Mr Johnson's new cabinet. But I think we're not going to hear much from the European side until a meeting in Biarritz of the G7 on the 24th of August.
24th of August. And is your sense, on the backstop, Bruno, is your sense that the EU is prepared to get rid of it or put a time limit on it?
I think there are things they might be able to do with it, but I don't think they're going to scrap it. And if you talk to sort of ambassadors here, and obviously the Irish are pretty firm and hard line on this, but you talk to other ambassadors, and they say, look, it's a difficult time at the moment. We've got a bit of a battle with Donald Trump, which will probably come up at the G7 in France, over trade. We know that Vladimir Putin's breathing down our neck. Are we really going to throw Ireland under a bus? Are we really going to roll over and give something that we don't want to give and we didn't give before? Are we really going to do that in the current climate? So they would argue it's really not in their self-interest to do so at the moment, and they would actually lose more politically than is warranted by the economic impact.
Yeah, they'd lose face too. Bruno, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And that was Bruno Waterfield, Brussels correspondent for The Times and a real insider. And he's making the point that they're just not going to completely get rid of the backstop. That would be just politically too much loss of face. Are you persuaded? Are you one of those who are part of the Boris bounce, or are you sceptical? Pauline on Facebook is sceptical. With Remainers in the cabinet, Boris could be playing a blinder by keeping his enemies close and keeping an eye on them. Yep. Bob says, why is Boris trying to make a deal if he wants to leave? The one thing we don't want is any ties. And Bob, that is how I feel about this. I think even if the backstop was to be watered down, time limited, or in the unlikely event removed, even if you take the backstop out of the equation, the withdrawal agreement costs a fortune, keeps us too closely tied, and is a rotten deal dreamt up by a Prime Minister who frankly didn't really want us to leave. Paul is a new caller to me from Stoke-on-Trent. Good morning, Paul.
Hi, Nigel.
Good morning. Are you convinced by Boris, Paul?
I am so convinced. I mean, I was a member of the Brexit Party.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm not now. And I joined the Conservatives this morning because I just know that this guy's the right way. And I'm ready. I've got my family. We've changed. We've become vegetarians. We do not drink. We will not eat European cheese, any kind of meat. I am so ready for this. And if this means that I lose my business, I'm willing to do it because we are on war settings. We are going to.
Why would you lose your business, Paul?
Oh, because we do a lot of importing from France and Germany, and if they're whacking on tariffs, then I don't care. I will literally. It doesn't bother me. I live in a tent.
Yeah, mind you, what sterling does, of course, is far more important than tariffs, isn't it?
I don't really understand that.
Right. Well, in terms of pricing, I can assure you that if you're buying things in, fluctuations on currency are far more than any tariff on those goods. So, Paul, you're convinced. What happens on the 1st of November if we haven't left?
We will, because Boris has said it. He won't let us down, will he?
Well, I heard that Mrs. May told us 108 times, Paul, and she let us down.
But he was, like you say, Nigel. She was a Remainer. Boris is not.
Well, you're right. He did become a leaver after he'd written 2 articles. One, why we should stay, and one, why we should leave. I mean, you believe, Paul...
What 2 articles?
You believe that Boris is now a nailed-on leaver and that he will go for no deal, yeah?
Was he always a leaver? He was a leaver, wasn't he?
No. He was a Remainer for the whole of his career.
Was he?
Until 5 minutes to midnight. And then he opted for leave, and I'm very pleased that he did, by the way. But he's been a Remainer his whole career.
You've always been a leaver?
Sorry?
Have you always been a leaver?
Oh, since I was in shorts, I think, yeah.
What, have I made a mistake then?
Well, maybe. Paul, I'll leave you to it. All right, thank you. Well, it takes all sorts, I suppose. Alan is calling from Aberdeen. Good morning, Alan.
Good morning, Nigel.
So, now Boris has got some problems north of the border, hasn't he? Because he sacked the existing Scottish Secretary.
Yeah.
Ruth Davidson apparently is furious with him. What's going on, Alan?
In Scotland here, Boris is actually representing 1 million plus Scots now. At least we've got a voice. I think there's a possibility Boris is coming to Scotland tomorrow, is he? So he's going to sit down with Ruth.
Coming very soon, yes.
Boris has given a reinvigoration, I think, to the whole country, the whole of the United Kingdom. So the Scottish MPs need to jump on board, pure and simply, with Boris.
But Alan, the talk is they're so upset with Boris that they're talking about the Scottish Conservative MPs breaking away and forming their own separate grouping.
Well, you know, that's just, I think, as you say, it's just talk. At the end of the day, you know, you can't let the SNP hijack the whole of this Brexit thing like they've tried to do. 1 million Scots voted to leave.
I know.
You know, at the end of the day, the SNP, they don't represent the majority of us the best of times as far as I'm concerned. Boris has given a reinvigoration. I mean, I spoke to a staunch SNP person the other day, and even she was sitting praising a Tory MP, saying, well, at least he's representing us, because for the SNP, everything's about independence. Everything. So the Scottish MPs need to get on board with Boris.
Yeah,
at the end of the day,
but here's the problem, Alan. Look, the SNP have their problems over the EU too, because about a third of their voters voted for Brexit, and of course they believe that independence can only be achieved outside the European Union, not just the United Kingdom. But Alan, here's the problem. Ruth Davidson is a Remainer. Most of those Conservative MPs that got in last time in Scotland are Remainers. They're going to have a problem with Boris, aren't they?
Yes, they are, but they need to understand we're part of the United Kingdom. So by them jumping ship, that creates a threat to letting Corbyn into Westminster by splitting the vote. And all Tories need to be thinking about this. And I voted the Brexit Party in the last election there, Nigel.
Yep.
But we also need to think about the threat of that anti-Semitic terrorist sympathiser. We can't let him in by the back door. So we have to stick together on this. You know, everybody needs to start working together. Boris I think he's given a real lift that we really, really need. I loved his first speech. I love the fact that he's already sticking up
Alan,
for the soldiers.
I think for the Conservative part, you say sticking up for soldiers. Actually, he hasn't appointed a veterans minister, which has surprised many, many people. But Alan, I think the vast majority of Conservatives across the UK are very pleased with the start he's made, with the exception of Scotland. And I wonder whether his visit up to meet Ruth will be a very difficult one. You think they'll rally round, do you?
I think they've got. I think they have to. They have to, because the Brexit referendum. It's the UK membership. It was a UK referendum.
No, I understand
UK
that.
membership, and we have to go by the majority. They have to start representing the majority.
What they have to do, what they will do, and we'll see. But for peace to break out, Ruth Davidson will need to climb down a little bit. Won't be that easy. Thank you, Alan, for your call. Scotland, one of Boris's little internal difficulties. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it is 10:45.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast, LBC.
We're being deprived of talented people, truly representative of their communities, who could do a better job of something like Brexit, for example.
Well, how else would you do? Tell me what you'd do then. We can only have a Prime Minister if he or she attended a comprehensive school or an academy. Is that what you're saying? Do we also need then to represent children who leave school at 16 with no qualifications? Because they're not represented either. So presumably we need someone now possibly in their 30s or 40s who left school with no qualifications whatsoever age 16. Is that what? Do we need that?
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7.
With Xero. Get your business digital ready with Xero accounting software.
LBC.
50 years ago, we made a remarkable moment in history when man landed and walked on the moon for the first time. It's amazing what we can do when we think beyond limits. That's why Vodafone are giving small businesses what they need to discover their full potential with their new unlimited 5G data plans. Plus, with the OneNet virtual landline, you can be online anywhere. Go beyond limits and see what your business can achieve. Search Vodafone Business Unlimited.
Football is back on Sky Sports. With our total football offer, you get all our football for just £18 extra a month. Absolutely amazing. Sky Sports has more live games than ever before and more of the biggest fixtures. That means more passion, more drama, more glory. All for just £18 extra a month. And it's live. Search by Sky Sports. Sky Sports Football and Premier League, £18 a month for 18 months. Requires Sky TV. Prices may change during this period. Offer ends September 26th.
William, Pamela and Anthony were sold investments by banks and ended up losing money. Luckily, they contacted the financial claims experts at Goodwin Barrett and were able to claim back a total of £65,500. At Goodwin Barrett, we may be able to help you too. If you've lost money on an investment sold by a bank, even if you no longer have the investment or the paperwork, just text GOOD to 60777 for a free assessment on how much you could be owed. Text GOOD to 60777 and we'll call you back.
Here's a question. Will you bask in the cobalt Caribbean or sleep beneath the ice cliffs of Alaska? And which view will you sip your afternoon tea to? The New York skyline or the Norwegian fjords? And then what? To dine, to dance, to swim, or to simply promenade? Or perhaps you prefer to enjoy nothing. Not even a cloud between you and the moon. Nothing. Except your every need. Sail beyond your imagination. Visit cunard.com for exclusive offers on selected voyages. ABTA and ATOL protected.
Turn to The Telegraph for clarity as Boris Johnson settles into number 10. Can he turn his now famous eminently feasible into something that's everybody pleasable, with plans on a hard border, a hard bargain, or a hard Brexit? Turn to the team who know him best. Subscribe now at telegraph.co.uk.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Are you part of the Boris bounce or are you sceptical? Patrick in Chelmsford is certainly sceptical. He says, Nigel, don't fall for all this Conservative nonsense. When it comes to the crunch, the EU no Boris is all bluff. Boris will do the same thing as Mrs May when faced with a choice of no deal, and he'll extend Article 50. More money wasted on bluster. Oh, after 3 wasted years, the last thing anyone wants to see, I think, is an extension to Article 50. Unless, of course, you want a second referendum, although we don't hear so much about that these days. Some real scepticism here about the Johnson family. Stanley supporting his son, what a turnaround. Just like his brother Joe returning to government to support no deal. Can't people see they're all in it for themselves? Nobody trusts Boris. And I'll be astonished if the public give the Tories a second chance in a general election, says Dan. So some scepticism out there too. Let's go to Paul from Southampton and see what he thinks. Paul, good morning to you.
Morning, Nigel.
Are you a Boris supporter?
I'm a Boris fan at the moment. I'm just hoping that he sticks to his guns and calls the bluff of the EU. I think they're after our money. That's why they're trying to hold us tight.
Yes.
And we just need to say on the 31st, see you later.
And is Boris going to do that, Paul?
I don't think he has a choice. I don't agree with you thinking he's going to come back saying, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. He can't afford to, because with you lot waiting in the wings, he's never, ever going to get a majority in government, is he?
Well,
Not if he comes back with tail between his legs.
I mean, his primary objective, clearly, is to amend the withdrawal agreement and put it back to Parliament, isn't it? That's base one for him.
Well, it is for him, but not for us. We need to just say, don't bother. Just walk away from it.
And how would you feel, Paul?
More time on it.
How would you feel, Paul, if he did get an amended withdrawal agreement through the House of Commons?
I would feel let down, because you can't improve that withdrawal agreement. Is so rubbish.
Yes.
What's he going to do with it? You know, it holds us right to the EU, and we need to get away from them. They want our money, and it's plain as that. The longer they keep us tied,
they want our money. And I know they've always wanted our money, and of course, Mrs. Thatcher upset them all by saying, "We want our money back." If you remember, a long time ago, mind you.
But if you look at how much we pay to everybody else, it's only the Germans that pay more than us.
Yes, well, the Germans pay quite a lot more than us, but yes, that's true.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and we pay a lot more than even the French.
So, in short, Paul, Boris will deliver a no-deal Brexit. Otherwise, electorally, they'll get massacred. They
will do. Yeah, even the Labour Party will get massacred, because there's a lot of Remain seats up north, and they will punish the Labour Party.
Yeah, oh no, Labour have got plenty of problems on this too. Paul, I thank you for it. Good morning, Nigel. I'm 50 years old. Ever since I was able to, I voted Conservative in every type of election. I will never vote Tory again because of the mess they've created. I'm now a Lib Dem, says Nick from Denmead in Hampshire. And there are going to be some people like that. There are going to be some people who are Remainers who will think with Boris's rhetoric, we can't stick with it. And they will have known that, but they also would have thought in the first few days we'll pick up more from the Brexit party than we'll lose to the Lib Dems. Phil is calling from Cambridge. Good morning, Phil.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. Now, are you a Conservative voter, Phil?
I am indeed. I just wanted to tell you, actually, that we spoke on the 20th of January this year before you launched the Brexit Party, which was brilliant, by the way. I think you guys have been very influential into what's happened recently in politics. Which is fantastic.
It does look a bit like the Brexit Party playbook at the moment, doesn't it, what Boris is saying?
All very good stuff. But the reason for my call really is that such a breath of fresh air, an injection of enthusiasm has been spiked into the Conservative Party.
Well, it couldn't have been worse than it was before, Phil, could it?
Not really, no. I mean, Johnson's opening speech and the way he completely destroyed Corbyn on the first day was absolutely amazing. And, of course, Corbyn admitting to the fact that under certain circumstances he would vote to remain is, well, from my position, is political suicide for the man.
Well, I agree with that. 5 million Labour voters who voted Leave, and they're particularly concentrated in South Wales, the Midlands of England and the North, and I think they will pay a terrible price now that they are virtually a Remain party. Phil, I completely agree with you, and I've said already this morning, I thought Boris's style was great. I think the word energy, which was the word that President Trump used directly to me in describing Boris, I think that's been right. But, Phil, is he actually going to deliver?
Well, we'll have to... I mean, my philosophy on this currently is that the guy's got so much enthusiasm and everyone's so upbeat that, if it's not broken, let's not try and fix it. Let's wait until the 31st of October. If he can come through with the right deal or no deal, then as long as we're out, we're out. after that, we can decide what we're going to do as a nation.
Well, Phil, I'd agree with that, but I do not want that withdrawal agreement back under any form. Just getting rid of the backstop is not enough for me. Phil, thank you for your call. It's funny, all the abusive tweets and texts never have a name on them, do they? We've got a decent PM. Stop being jealous, Mr. Farage. Get a grip. No, I'm not. I'm saying I think he's made a great start. I love to hear what he's saying. I just question whether he's going to deliver. And I really, really think he's going to bring that wretched withdrawal agreement back to the House of Commons. The Boris Johnson, whoever you are, that twice voted against it, said we become a slave state and then voted for it. Can you see why it's not unreasonable to ask some of these questions? Let's go to Warrington in Cheshire and speak to Peter. Good morning.
Morning, Nigel.
So what do you make of it so far?
Very good so far. So far, so good.
Yep.
My question to you is that in the United States, the Trump administration are cleaning out corruption in politics, Hollywood and business. Is Boris Johnson going to do the same here in the UK?
No, because Boris Johnson is not a radical. Boris is very much part of the establishment. With Boris as Prime Minister, the House of Lords will continue as it is, the electoral system will continue as it is, the Quangos will probably continue as they do. I don't see him being a radical Prime Minister, but he could... Despite that, he could be an historically famous standout Prime Minister if he gets us out cleanly of the EU on the 31st of October.
So he's a one-trick pony then, in your view?
Well, look, he's talking about social care and education and policing, and he'll talk about these other things, but none of that matters ultimately in terms of his legacy, because Brexit is the defining issue of our age, and he will succeed or fail on this, Peter. I mean, he could be, as I've said already, he could be a hero, and that empty fourth plinth in Trafalgar Square could be his, or he could be one of the shortest-lived prime ministers in history. I mean, everything rests on delivery, doesn't it?
It does indeed, yeah, and I suspect that he's going to be a short prime minister.
Because his own party in Parliament won't back him, or...?
I think so, yeah. I think the penny will drop with people, and people will realise that he's not delivering on what people really want, which is a clean system, clean government, and that's more important to people. All right, he's allegedly getting 20,000 more police.
Do you know, Peter, I thought for years, if we just get Brexit, it would be a different country, and I've realised in the last 3 years that Brexit actually is the first step towards radical reform of all our institutions in this country, which I think is very badly needed. Great call. Jay from Bournemouth, I haven't got long, but please, what do you make of Boris's start? Do you believe he'll deliver?
Nigel, I love this start, man. I love this start. But I want to see you in Downing Street because I don't trust these Tories. The last time I spoke to you, I was in Ghana, West Africa. A few days later, I had lunch with 2 West African politicians. Mm-hmm. They said to me, after watching the antics of the Conservative politicians in the Houses of Parliament on television, it reminded them of the 2008 general election in Zimbabwe, which the dictator Robert Mugabe lost, and he turned to his lieutenant and said, "Don't worry, boys, carry on as normal." And that's the way we're fought in the former colonies. And it's a disgrace.
So you just don't... so you, Jay, simply don't trust the Conservative Party at all?
Well, look at this. Look, Nigel, let me tell you something. Before the referendum, I was putting leaflets through the door for UKIP. And a West Indian lady came out the door and she said to me, "We're voting for Nigel Farage." And I said, "Why, madam?" And she said, "We're voting because David Cameron has given more rights to European foreigners in this country than British citizens have."
That's a fair point.
And she was very upset about it. She said her husband, who's also a West Indian, he was going to vote for you as well. And she said, and now people are saying to me now, Boris wants to give an amnesty to 3 million illegal immigrants here in this country. 3 million illegal immigrants.
I think it's 500,000.
Are we going to have a tri-level of rights? Are we going to have one level of rights for British citizens, one level for European citizens, and another level of rights for people who have applied for amnesty?
Jay, I tell you what, on the issue of immigration, Boris is just about the weakest PM we've had for a very long time. Jay, I thank you very much indeed. Now, Jeremy Corbyn says he is absolutely absolutely preparing to take on Boris Johnson in a general election, and he has candidates ready to go. In an interview with Sky News, he says Britain deserves a general election. So I want to ask you, does Britain deserve a general election? And if you think, yep, absolutely, we need one, call 0345 6060 973. Or maybe you think, like Brenda from Bristol, oh no, not another one, in which case text to 84850 and tell me, do you think there will be an election this year? Because I think there will. Please tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and watch us on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube, and comment there too.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, the Prime Minister's father, Stanley Johnson, has told LBC the European Union is being stubborn and it shouldn't underestimate his son's resolve to deliver a no-deal Brexit.
When he says no ifs and buts, he means it. Everything I see leads me to suppose that he is as solid as a rock on this commitment that Britain will come out on October the 31st. This message will get across to our European colleagues as they realise the one thing which is really going to throw Ireland under the bus is having a no-deal Brexit, which seems to be being forced upon us. So honestly, I think there has to be a change.
This morning, Boris Johnson's Chancellor Sajid Javid is releasing millions of pounds in no-deal Brexit spending in what's being dubbed Project No Fear. The money will be spent on the UK's biggest ever public information campaign, with leaflet drops to every home in the United Kingdom, reassuring every person and business. Separately, polling in the Sunday newspapers suggests Boris Johnson has created a so-called Boris bounce. Days after taking office, some have Prime Minister Johnson's Conservative Party 10 points ahead of Labour. But leader Jeremy Corbyn says he's not worried in the slightest if Mr Johnson calls a snap general election.
I've got my summer campaign plan in place. We've got most of our candidates selected in all our marginal constituencies. We have many of our policy announcements in place and working out more details on our health and social care policy.
In other headlines this hour, an investigation has found a British SAS soldier who died fighting Islamic State in Syria was killed by friendly fire. The United States had claimed he was killed by a roadside bomb. Sergeant Matt Tonro died last year. The mayor of Baltimore is describing the US president as a disappointment to the city, the country and the world. It follows US President Donald Trump referring to a majority black district there as a disgusting, rodent-infested mess. Organisers say more than 8,000 people attended a rally calling for Wales to be an independent country. They describe yesterday's protest in Carnarvon as the biggest they've seen. After the hottest day of the year last week, some parts of the United Kingdom are now being told they could flood. The Met Office has issued a yellow weather warning for the Midlands, the northwest of England and Scotland. Forecaster Helen Roberts says that might be a problem.
Our recent hot spell wasn't that prolonged, but still enough to dry the ground out. So that means that the ground is very hard, and when we get these sudden downpours, the water just bounces off the ground. There's nowhere for it to go, so it results in some surface water issues.
A British teenager is reportedly stunned after winning almost £1 million playing Fortnite professionally. 15-year-old Jaden Ashman, who's from Essex, took part in the duo category of the Video Games World Cup in New York. LBC weather. Heavy rain across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, North Wales, northwest England, the Midlands and East Anglia. Dry elsewhere, a high of 23 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Philip Chryssikos.
It is quite an uncomfortable area. To be honest with anybody about, and then I wasn't honest about where my money was coming from or what I was doing.
I suppose we were kind of just spending without really questioning if we could afford it.
It was a whirlwind romance, I suppose.
It isn't easy talking to your family about money, but it is important. The M word from Lloyds Bank. It's good to talk about money.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Well, in many ways, it looks like Boris Johnson is on full campaign mode, going out round the country, donning high-vis jackets and hard hats, and, of course, appointing someone called Dominic Cummings, who we'll talk about in the next hour, to a very powerful position. Looks in many ways like the Conservative Party are gearing up for a general election. But not to be left out of all of this, of course, is Jeremy Corbyn. Here he was speaking to Sky News this morning.
Absolutely. I've got my summer campaign plan in place. We've got most of our candidates selected in all our marginal constituencies. We have many of our policy announcements in place, particularly the ones on the Green Industrial Revolution and the Green New Deal that we're putting forward, and working out more details on our health and social care policies. But fundamentally, it's about reducing inequality in Britain and about investing in good quality, sustainable jobs for the future through the green energy revolution.
Are you a bit worried about going up against Boris Johnson in an election? I mean, he's won in Labour territory before in London.
Not in the slightest. We'll go out there and we'll make our case. I don't get involved in personal abuse. I don't make any personal abuse. I don't do personal. As far as I'm concerned, the issues are too serious.
So Jeremy Corbyn is ready. They've got their candidates, and he says the country deserves a general election. Do you think we deserve a general election? And if you do, call 0345 6060 973. Or maybe, like the famous Brenda from Bristol, you think, oh no, not another one. In which case, text to 84850. And do you think there'll be a general election this year? I kind of had it at about 50%. I think the chances have gone up a little bit. Tell me what you think by tweeting using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And of course, you can watch us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and comment there too. Well, joining me to discuss all of this is Alex Dean, former Chief of Staff to David Cameron, Conservative commentator, a regular writer, appears on newspaper reviews on Sky News almost every day, and is Senior Managing Director at FTI Consulting. Alex, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel.
To you. Firstly, just tell me, as a Conservative commentator, how good a start has Boris made?
Fantastic. He's really hit the ground running. The verve, the enthusiasm has really exceeded even, and I had high expectations, has exceeded my expectations. And I tell you what, the Westminster Village feels different, doesn't it? It doesn't, no reflection on Theresa May necessarily, but you
I think it is.
Well, I'm taking the positive from it, right? Her ministers and the people, that government, it just felt like it was so, between austerity and Brexit, it just felt like it was so worn down. There was so little positivity about it. And then suddenly here's Boris, bam, housing, bam, policing, but real domestic agenda and much more energy and verve on Brexit.
Yeah, energy, and as you know, I met Donald Trump last week, and Trump said to me, energy. That's what Boris has got, energy, and he's absolutely right about that. And we've seen that, and there's the Boris bounce in the polls. Difficulty is, how does he deliver Brexit by the 31st of October? It seems to me there are perhaps two ways, or maybe three ways. Way one is Brussels makes some concessions and he puts the, in my opinion, dreadful withdrawal agreement back to the House of Commons. And, of course, Boris famously twice against it, once for it. Do you agree with me that his sort of number one choice would be to get some amendments on that?
I don't know what your options 2 and 3 are, but yes, I agree. Option 1 is the route he's going to go down. And I think that part of it sits with this, that Theresa May's negotiation team, most of all Theresa May, were unable to get concessions out of the EU because when she said no deal is better than a bad deal, they didn't believe her. Yes. They didn't believe that she meant it.
And Barnier said she never really put it on the table.
No, but Boris, and Barnier even said, well, no one said these things to me. I know. But Boris really is, this is a real concerted, determined attempt to make the Europeans understand, I mean this. If we don't come out with a deal on the 31st of October, we're coming out without one.
But Boris doesn't want a no deal, does he?
Well, nobody wants a no deal in the Parliamentary Tory Party. Well, very few do.
Lots in the country do.
Lots in the country do, but very few do. And certainly we know there's not a majority in Parliament for no deal. The only thing we've seen that there's a majority in the current Parliament for is the withdrawal agreement minus the backstop, vis-a-vis the Brady Amendment. That's the only thing we've seen people vote positively for. We've seen them vote against all manner of things, most especially no deal. But the only thing we've seen actually pass through Parliament with a sense of approval is the withdrawal agreement that Theresa May negotiated without the backstop in Ireland.
Well, I honestly, and as you know, I've worked in Brussels for 20 years, and I just, these people, the thought of the Junckers and the Barniers substantially losing face and completely ditching the backstop. I think it's for the birds.
No, I don't think they're going to completely ditch it. I think we're getting the signals of what we should listen to from people like Angela Merkel, who said the backstop could be overwritten. And it's a very interesting choice of words, right? And I think she's indicating that when push comes to shove, there's some room for changes that will be led by the heads of national governments who pragmatically think to themselves, yes, it's all been well and good over the last 3 years negotiating. In the end, we'd far rather have a deal with the United Kingdom, such an important market to us, than not have a deal. And in that sense, people have criticised the Boris regime and said you can't do it in time. Time is on our side because it's going to focus minds in a very short period of time. Sometimes it's the fact you've got almost no time left that focuses determination and gets things done.
But it still has to get through the House of Commons.
True.
And that is going to be a very, very difficult job. My position is I don't want that withdrawal. Even if they took the backstop out, I don't want the withdrawal agreement. And I'm certain there are quite a lot of others in the House of Commons who do feel that, which would leave us, if I'm right, that they won't give us enough to get, and it's not going to go through the Commons. We're then left with WTO. Option 2 is a WTO Brexit, and it links to option 3. Surely the only way WTO can happen is if there's a general election before the 31st of October.
Yeah, there is just no way the Tory party will want to go to the polls before the 31st of October.
Well, they want to.
Nigel,
no, I didn't say they want to.
I'm looking at the reason why. right? Because your lot would marmalise us. We would find ourselves divided on the right, the broad right, and we would find that the resurgent left would take chunks out of us. And the only hope we'd have in those circumstances is that the left would divide up similarly Lib Dems and Lab, and that's pretty thin gruel to pin your electoral hopes on. So Boris will absolutely not want to go to the polls before Brexit's done. And bear in mind, this may
be. But what if you can't get Brexit? What if the withdrawal agreement hasn't been, it's not been changed enough? It can't go through the House of Commons.
Then we've got to come out.
There isn't. Okay, then there is not a Commons majority for leaving on WTO terms. And we know that Philip Hammond.
You don't have to have a positive vote for it. It's up to the executive.
Are you telling me that because the law of the land, as it currently stands, is we leave at 11 p.m. on the 31st of October. Are you telling me that if the government was to hold firm on that, there is nothing anyone can do to stop it?
Correct.
What if they vote to bring the government down?
Well, they can try, but of course with the Fixed Term Parliament Act, you'll need a 2/3 majority to have an early election. They'll struggle very much to do that. Corbyn's already backed away from a no-confidence vote, and the reason he's doing that, Nigel, is he'd lose one. So what can they actually do?
But the Labour Party couldn't possibly vote against the general election, given that it's been their main policy for the last year or more.
No. If we had a vote in the Commons on no confidence, then most of the Labour Party members would vote against the government. And if we had a vote on whether or not to have a general election, then many of the Labour Party MPs, including many of them who voted for a general election last time in tears as they went through the lobby, would do so again. But you wouldn't get 2/3 for the general election option. And on the no confidence one, I still think nip and tuck, the government wins. So my answer is yes, absolutely, I mean it. The government, if it holds firm, but there will deliver no-deal Brexit.
If we are heading towards the 31st of October, towards a no-deal Brexit, there will be a vote in the House of Commons on this issue. Unavoidably, John Bercow will allow a vote. Sure. And are you telling me that if there was a huge parliamentary vote against leaving on those terms, the government would still continue?
Yes.
Do you really believe that Boris would do that?
And that's what it should do, because as some
I know it's what it should do.
As some of our favourite opponents in recent times have said, Nigel, it's only an indicative vote.
Well, they certainly have. But, supposing you finish up with, 30, 50... Conservative MPs saying we will resign the whip, we will leave the Conservative Party. You still think Boris would go? He would risk his validity as Prime Minister to get a no-deal Brexit? Or wouldn't it be easier to extend Article 50 by 6 months in those circumstances?
These Tory MPs were elected on the basis that they believed that no deal was better than a bad deal. It's in the manifesto.
I know.
And leaving the single market.
Since when did the Tory party care about manifestos?
Well, I'm talking about it. Leaving the single market and leaving the customs union. And on part 2 of what you said about an extension, we've already seen the career of one Tory Prime Minister ended by promising to deliver Brexit by date certain and failing to do so. Boris will not be the second.
Interesting. Well, it'll take a lot of great courage. And I presume if we did then leave on the 31st of October...
Happy day.
And if that was popular in the country, we probably then might get a general election this year, because let's just remember... And we take all polling with a pinch of salt.
Sure.
But very interesting to see the Delta poll this morning suggesting that actually, if Corbyn was ditched in favour of a more savoury Labour leader, that they would then have quite a poll lead over the Tories. So why not have an election whilst Corbyn's still there?
Well, there are at least two reasons. The first is that whilst it may not feel particularly relevant to us anymore, if you're a Tory Member of Parliament, you've got the very haunting image, and indeed sometimes presence, of the 33 colleagues who lost their seats in 2017, who were told, Theresa May's on 50% plus, don't worry, we're all going to get in here, boys. And then they saw it crash from between the campaign period, between calling the election and having the election. And it doesn't matter how strong the polls are, every Tory MP will have going through their minds in those circumstances, you said this 2 years ago, and look what happened. I might lose my seat if we do this.
So you put the chances of a poll this year, an election this year, quite low?
Certainly below your 50%.
Yeah, fine. OK, now let's move on to a really interesting point. A name we're going to hear a lot of, I think, is Dominic Cummings, and some of you already will have heard of him. Highly controversial figure, a campaigner, somebody who says quite abusive things about many in the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
Why is Dominic Cummings, why has he been put into this very powerful position in number 10?
So I don't know him particularly well. He was, of course, a leading light in the Vote Leave campaign. As you will remember, I was the executive director of the Grassroots Out campaign, and we lost the designation in the Electoral Commission to Dom and his campaign. Fair enough, and I accept the results of the umpire in much the same way I wish Remainers accepted the results of our great British public when they vote. But I think, so I don't particularly know him well, but I know a lot of the people who were on that campaign with him well, most especially someone who I have great respect for, Matthew Elliott, who has been one of the great leading lights in think tank land and ideas space and campaigning in the UK in recent years. And Matthew and co really trust Cummings. And a part of it, I think, is that they think whatever his controversy in terms of people find him abrasive or people find him outspoken, he is one of the foremost people in British politics at getting things done. And this is a government in a hurry. This is a government that's desperate to deliver, not just in its first 100 days, but in its first month. You know, it's desperate to chalk up achievements and to demonstrate it's doing things. And part of the rough part of doing things is sometimes you've got to say no to the right people as well as yes. Well, Cummings is Mr. No. You know, he's brilliant at saying a blunt no to people and moving on. And that's probably what Boris needs. Boris and co, it's one of the interesting qualities about Boris. I think he likes to be liked, and I think he likes to say yes to everyone. And he needs a Mr. No in number 10 with him to say, yeah, actually, I don't care what the boss says.
The danger, though, of course,
is
no. The danger. I mean, Alistair Campbell, quite famously said that when he was Blair's, press secretary, that when he became the story, that was the problem. It wasn't supposed to be about him. And there is, I guess, a danger that Cummings does become the story.
Yeah, that test is, I think, sometimes a bit unfair because we've become so much more interested in the machinery of government and in the backroom players than we used to be. Very few people knew who the backroom people pre-Thatcher were in any administration, whether Tory or Labour. But it's become increasingly a kind of inside baseball topic of interest. That said, it's true.
Yeah.
If you become the story, it's a problem.
It's a problem. Now, Benedict Cumberbatch famously played him in that. I mean, was that portrayal accurate, do you think?
I mean, I've only met him a handful of times, but I found it eerily accurate in terms of the impression. In terms of the impression, I thought that was remarkable.
And finally, Alex, I must ask you, we keep hearing and debating on this show comments from Tony Blair, John Major, who seems to be more active in politics than he was when he was Prime Minister. I mean, there's so much cricket going on, John Major. Just go and watch the Ashes, please. It's going to be fun. But the one, and I do get asked this question, sort of sarcastic texts and tweets, sort of, things like, do you remember David Cameron? Where is David Cameron on the public stage?
Oh, he may be due a comeback. And I admire and respect him still, and it may make me unpopular with Brexiteers, but I think he was a good man doing his best, and he gave us the referendum, which I will forever be grateful to him for.
Well, he did give us the referendum, yes. I remember the day he made the pledge, and I was absolutely cheering and partying, as I was partying on the night, as you were too, the 23rd, 24th of June, 2016. And we've had 3 wasted years, but Alex Dean tells us that absolutely, there was no question that we are leaving on the 31st of October. It will happen. I thank you, Alex, very much indeed for coming in and giving us that upbeat message. I've heard it all before. I mean, I sat here in this chair after Mrs May gave her Lancaster House speech, and I thought, it's happened. We've won, and here we are. We're still going. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's now 11:19.
LBC.
From discovering electricity to revolutionising work, play and communications, innovators do amazing things when they think beyond limits. So Vodafone are giving small businesses the power to unlock their full potential with their unlimited 5G data plans, plus business add-ons to keep your business running smoothly anywhere. Go beyond your limits. Find out more and enter to win a Samsung 5G device plus £1,000 for your business at lbc.co.uk.
It's the month-end sale at Oak Furnitureland with great savings on 100% solid hardwood furniture and free delivery, online and in-store, and Sunday.
William, Pamela and Anthony were sold investments by banks and ended up losing money. Luckily, they contacted the financial claims experts at Goodwin Barrett and were able to claim back a total of £65,500. At Goodwin Barrett, we may be able to help you too. If you've lost money on an investment sold by a bank, even if you no longer have the investment or the paperwork, just text GOOD to 60777 for a free assessment on how much you could be owed. Text GOOD to 60777 and we'll call you back.
Imagine, if you can, days that get longer by the minute and warmer by the mile. Imagine, if you can, a horizon that falls further away the closer you draw to it. Now consider looking up. Picture the rotation of a cloudless, infinite sky. And as the sun slinks away into the sea, that same sky becoming bejeweled with stars. Now, turn up the music and dance until dawn. Sail beyond your imagination. The Transatlantic Crossing by Cunard. Discover more at cunard.com. ABTA and ATOL protected.
The toughest jobs or the easy ones. The long journeys or the shorter runs. Transporting the big, carrying the small. An iconic van that does it all. Negotiating traffic or the open road. Handling load after load after load. A project started, a job concluded. With 3 years roadside assistance and 2 free services included. The Volkswagen Transporter for just £259 a month on contract hire. Volkswagen Commercial Vehicles. Working with you. Business users only. No ownership, excluding VAT at 20%. 48-month contract hire. £1,554 initial rental. Exclusions, restrictions and T's and C's apply. Service plan covers first 2 consecutive services. Available until the 30th of September 2019. Volkswagen Finance.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
Well, Jeremy Corbyn's gearing up for a general election. Here he was speaking to Sky News on Thursday.
Conservative and DUP MPs need to recognise this is a government that barely has an arithmetic majority in Parliament.
That's true.
And certainly doesn't have the confidence of the people of this country. The request I made to the Prime Minister today, and I make it to the new Prime Minister, was that this country deserves a general election to decide which government it wants, who it wants in government, and how we're going to deal with the glaring inequalities and injustice within our society. The new Prime Minister didn't offer a solution to any of those issues today. All he offered was actually a continuation of austerity and more tax cuts for the very richest.
And Jeremy Corbyn, you know, he's getting ready for an election. He says we deserve a general election. I don't know, is it me? Or has Corbyn lost some of that energy? Remember, you know, that 2017 campaign, he did seem to have a lot of energy, and he finished up on the stage at Glastonbury and hundreds of thousands of people cheering and chanting, "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn." We seem a long, long way from that. So, do we deserve a general election? Is it the right thing for this country? Let's go to John in Liverpool. John, do you want a general election?
Oh, good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
Well, no, I don't want a general election. I want one if Boris betrays us and he fails to deliver on our EU Brexit. So I think he should be put to the sword by the electorate if he doesn't deliver.
Right, but if he doesn't deliver, he's unlikely to want to give us a general election, but I guess in those circumstances he might lose a vote of no confidence, might he?
Maybe. I mean, personally, I think he will deliver. He's a passionate Tory. He wants to save the Tory party. And that's what he'll do. He'll do whatever he needs to do to save his beloved party. So he will deliver Brexit. I'm absolutely convinced.
You're convinced that he'll stand firm. The whole world will condemn him. A third of his parliamentary party may threaten to resign, and he'll still, you think, he'll still get Brexit done, but know that he's going to be brought down.
He will, but at least he will have fought the good fight. The Tories may return to the party, and he saved his party. I think that's all he actually really cares about. I mean, if he doesn't, I mean, I voted for him. I'm a Tory member. I voted for him. If he doesn't deliver, I'll be resigning the day after. I'll be going to work for the Brexit Party and actively work for them. I will be joining.
Yeah, he actually, John, you know what? He has to deliver, but it's a question of how. John, thank you very much indeed. Nigel from Blandford says, bring on a general election and let's get rid of those MPs who do not represent their constituencies. Nigel, I have to say, I feel that very strongly, that this Parliament, 3 years, so many people in Parliament who just don't respect the will of the people in that referendum have done their utmost over the last 3 years to frustrate it. And that, I'd love to see a lot of those replaced. I really, truly would. Ray is from Stoke-on-Trent. Good morning, Ray.
Morning, Nigel.
Would you like a general election? Jeremy Corbyn thinks we deserve one.
He's got no chance, but I do think we need a general election.
Why?
The reason I phoned up is I was concerned that you've got people like Nicholas Soames. Sir Nicholas Soames, is it?
Yes.
Openly on the TV saying that Parliament will find a way to thwart Brexit. We're going to have a proper clean out, and the country's going to have to say, hold on, you guys work for us.
But do we get a proper clean out if British politics, or certainly English and Welsh politics, is dominated by these two existing parties? Because they're the ones that pick the candidates. Wouldn't it just return? Isn't the danger, Ray, that it returns a similar crop of people?
Yeah, that's the danger, and we have to make sure that people are very aware that this is really important vote. And I think the two-party system is breaking up. I think this is why they're not. I don't. Corbyn would go for an election if he thought you were going to win. He's got no chance. And the Lib Dems are taking loads of his votes. I mean, it's the.
They are. Joe Swinson is getting into quite a powerful position. Ray,
to be honest, Nigel, a quick one. The reason I voted and joined your campaigns and your groups and everything to get out of the EU is I wanted to remove the bureaucrats, because I want politics to change in this country. And if you want something to change, first you have to expose it for the useless people that they are. And I think they're doing that for me.
Yeah, no, Ray, I'm with you. For me, Brexit's the first step. We need fundamental change in our entire political system. It serves itself, not us. Ray, I thank you very much indeed for that call. Nigel, you seem desperate for a general election. I just hope power isn't going to your head. We Leavers have had enough of that. David, I'm not desperate for a general election at all. I'm arguing that I think the chances of an election are going up. Why? Because Boris may need one to get a WTO Brexit. Why? Because if he does deliver Brexit, he'll have one anyway. And with Corbyn's leadership as weak as it is, be mad of Camp Johnson to wait until a successor was in place, whoever that might be. And by the way, I'm putting it at just over 50%. I'm not saying it will happen, but I do think the chance of it has increased significantly, and that David Cameron, with people like Dominic Cummings around him, appears to be in full campaign mode. I'm not desperate for it, but I do think we're getting in that direction. Rick is calling from Blackpool.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
How are you?
I am well. I'm wondering, is Corbyn right that we deserve a general election?
I think Corbyn's on a suicide mission. I think he owes a great gratitude towards Theresa May because she's kept him alive for the past 3 years. They were more or less dead 3 years ago. I'm a massive supporter of you, Nigel. I've always voted UKIP. I voted UKIP in 2017. What I find interesting is if Boris would have come in 2017 and made all these noises, I probably would have voted for the Conservatives for the first time ever.
Well, Boris, of course, famously withdrew from that leadership race, didn't he, after the referendum? Yeah. It probably would have been much easier if Boris had become Prime Minister then than now, with 95 days to go. But do you...
Absolutely.
Do you see, Rick, the chance of a general election having increased or decreased in the last week?
I think it will increase as the weeks go on. I think... the wheels are going to come off Boris. He's going to start watering down his tone a bit. I mean, it was great to see him in the Commons with Dominic Raab and his death stare. Don't know how he didn't stop himself from jumping over and laying right into Labour. But
yeah, he does. I have to say, Raab does look pretty menacing, doesn't he?
He looks like a right one.
Well, it could just be that he's determined, Rick, couldn't it?
What else is interesting, Nigel, is as the time goes on and the more it gets watered down, it'll be interesting to see how many Conservative, if there's any more high-profile Conservative defections over to the Brexit Party.
I mean, there won't be, because they'll all be waiting and hoping that Boris can deliver. At the first sign that he either intends to put through that appalling withdrawal agreement or doesn't have the courage to really push on for no deal, then everything could change. But we're not there yet, Rick, by a long, long way. Rick, thank you very much for your support and for your call. Corbyn stronger than ever. The Tories are terrified of Corbyn. I don't know who you are that sent that, but that's absolute tosh. You know, we are so far past Pete Corbyn. He is looking actually very, very weak indeed. Is Corbyn hoping to replace the loss of Labour votes in the north by the manic voters who believe in the renationalisation of our industries? Well, Joan, renationalisation of things like the railway is actually quite a popular policy in many parts of the country, and Corbyn is talking about inequalities that exist, and nobody could argue that the gap between rich and poor had narrowed in the last few years. It certainly hasn't. But really what he's pinning so much of this on is his big new Green Deal, the big new Green Revolution. His difficulty, though, of course, is that the Liberal Democrats want exactly the same thing. The Green Party want exactly the same thing. The nationalist parties pretty much all want the same thing. And when it comes to the defining issue of the day, even though the Labour Party have got very, very close to being all-out Remain, he still ever so slightly equivocates in an interview, and by the end of it, nobody quite knows exactly what he's really saying on the defining issue of the day. He has to call for a general election, if there was one. If the Tories got Brexit done, he would do very, very badly indeed. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 11:30 and time for the news with Philip Chrysakos.
Attorney General Geoffrey Cox has reportedly told Boris Johnson he can legally pull the UK out of the EU on October the 31st, even if he loses a vote of no confidence and his new government collapses. Alex Dean, former Chief of Staff to David Cameron, has told Nigel it wouldn't come to that.
You wouldn't get two-thirds for the general election option. And on the no confidence one, I still think nip and tuck the government wins. So my answer is yes, absolutely, I mean it. The government, if it holds firm, but there will deliver no-deal Brexit.
One other headline this half hour, representatives from nations still committed to the Iran nuclear deal will meet the country's representative in Vienna later. China, Europe and Russia will discuss how to salvage the unravelling accord. LBC weather, heavy rain across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, North Wales, northwest England, the Midlands and East Anglia. Dry elsewhere, a high of 23 degrees.
This is LBC.
If you get BT Superfast Fibre Essential, go on, and BT Sport together, go on, you can choose tech worth up to £249 on us, like an Xbox One S All Digital Edition or a Samsung Galaxy tablet. Oh, get in! It's $39.99 a month with a 24-month contract and $29.99 setup. Join by 15th of August in time for the new season. Search BT Broadband. BT. Be there.
CPI increase each March from 2020. BT Sport content and price may change. New customers $47.99 a month from month 25. Terms apply.
Is 2019 the most confusing year ever? Fake lips, speaking fake news, eating fake meat. Let's put it to a vote. After vote, after vote. But are we being listened to by our home devices?
No.
They don't have the answer. Get past the confusion with the Confused.com Beat Your Renewal Quote Guarantee. If you can't beat your renewal quote, you get the difference plus £20. Don't be confused. Be Confused.com. T's and C's online, single annual policies only.
Block management? It's a doddle, isn't it? I mean, once you've got budget approval, all you need to do is your service charge invoices,
health and safety regulations paperwork, do the cleaning, the gardening, general maintenance, sort out site inspections, arrange contracts, insurance, emergency representation.
Yes, block management. Such a doddle.
Save time and money and cut down on the stress. For complete block management solutions, just call ABC Estates. ABC will take care of all your day-to-day management, leaving you as happy as Larry.
For complete block management solutions, see abcestates.co.uk or call 0800 888 6688.
I remember when those white walls were actually white.
Want to get your outdoor walls popping? Get to B&Q. Good Home Classic 10-litre pure brilliant white masonry paint is just £28. It's even got an anti-mould formula that's showerproof in just 1 hour. You can do it when you B&Q it.
In 1972, Swale Heating was born. Since then, we have sold thousands of boilers from top manufacturers like Worcester Bosch. This year, we will sell our 250,000th boiler for free. And you could be the lucky winner. Visit swaleheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Alexa, call Dave. Calling Dave.
Yeah.
Guess what?
You got an Amazon Echo Plus from Vodafone for switching to their superfast home broadband, and now you're calling me with it.
Yeah, I did. Switch to Vodafone Unlimited Superfast Home Broadband and get an Amazon Echo Plus on us. Superfast 1 is only £21 a month for pay monthly mobile customers for 18 months, plus $9.99 router fee. Hurry, offer ends 13th of August. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone. Subject to credit check, acceptance and availability. Sequence shortened, Alexa calling to be enabled. Visit vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Now, we had a phone call last Tuesday from Tim in Hatfield, and he was concerned as to who Boris might appoint in his cabinet because he wanted us to have strong negotiators. Here was part of Tim's call.
If you're going into a very tough period, you want people who are going to be very strong-willed, very focused on what they want to do. They're going to get pressure from the media, from colleagues, from Parliament itself. They're going to have to be a very tight-knit unit. But there's a lot of... this is a very cabinet, very similar to Mrs May's. And I'm worried that Boris, he does have a reputation of backsliding, and I think he may have taken us... he may have been liberal with the truth. But we can only wait and see. I agree. I'm waiting for tomorrow night to see who goes into that cabinet.
But if, for argument's sake, you knew by the weekend that Jacob Rees-Mogg had become the Brexit secretary, that John Redwood was the new chancellor, Ian Duncan-Smith was the new Home Secretary, you might change your mind, Tim.
Absolutely, I would. Yeah, I would expect someone of Jacob Rees-Mogg's calibre to either be the assistant or the Brexit secretary with Dominic Raab. If I was going into a tough negotiation like this, fighting for the life and soul of this country, you've got to have two people who will die by it, who live by it.
Well, that was Tim from Hatfield and Hertfordshire last Tuesday, and I did say to him, we'll get you back on, and he's with me now. Tim, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Thanks for having me back.
No, I thought it'd be very interesting, because I could see, as a Tory supporter, how concerned you were. Now, Jacob Rees-Mogg, in fact, of course, has become leader of the House. But when you look at this full list of appointments, and it's roughly 50-50, Leavers and Remainers, but are you impressed with who Boris has appointed?
I think the word I'd use is lukewarm. I'm disappointed there are not enough of the ERG in very senior positions. I would have expected a major role for Ian Duncan-Smith, John Redwood, Owen Paterson, people of outstanding calibre.
They've been left out completely,
Yeah, I wouldn't have expected Steve Baker to be offered the most junior role. And I can see the influence Dominic Cummings is having over Boris in terms of his appointments, because I don't think he was too favourable to the ERG. I think the most important person to deliver Brexit is actually you, and I'll explain this why. I'm with you. I think what he's going to try and do is alter the withdrawal bill on the backstop.
Yes.
And he's going to sell it to the public as we've left. Now, having studied the withdrawal bill in quite detail, there are many clauses that continue to make us a vassal state. And the guy who will hold Boris's feet to the fire will be the Brexit party, because he cannot get away with that. That is not Brexit. By default, I think the European Union will dig their heels in, and I think potentially we're leaving with a no deal, but not because of Boris, but because of people like you and the Brexit Party and people who are adamant we need to have a proper Brexit will hold him to account. My worry with him is he's voted for the withdrawal bill 3 times. He's had a history of being...
Well, he flips and flops, Tim, doesn't he? He flips and flops on all sorts of things.
He flips and flops.
Yeah.
And my great worry, when I'm looking at the appointments, I'm looking at what he's talking about, is you can divide this period in history to 2 parts. October the 31st, let's say we leave with a no deal by more default than Boris is doing. Does that mean then the Brexit Party and everything you stood for, everything you fought for, your job's done? I'd say no, because I think this guy's a liberal. I'm really looking at these policies, and I'm thinking this guy is not really a true conservative. And there are 3 major reasons, and the media have not picked this up. Number one, he's going around. He's now on an election campaign, and he's promising more police, greater healthcare, better education, railroads up north. Fantastic. But in the end, you've got to pay for this.
Yeah,
now,
and he's not
also saying we're going to reduce taxes.
He's not suggested any ways as he paying for any of it.
Well, we've got a £26 billion headroom, like an overdraft facility. These promises have been costed at about $44 billion. The only way we're going to do this is to borrow. But the problem is we've got a debt to GDP of 90%. Once we start breaching 100%, the financial markets will start to get very worried about the fiscal stability of this country. He hasn't talked about this at all. He's running around. So we've had years of fiscal prudence where 500,000 kids are on food banks.
And Tim, if I can hurry you, if I can hurry you slightly, Tim. Also, he's talking about an amnesty. Initially for 500,000 illegal immigrants.
Well, I've heard it's 1.5 million. That's madness, because we voted to get back control of our borders, and now we're going to throw that away. And a third point, when Trump came in, what he also did was shake up the institutions, okay? The BBC needs a great shake-up. The civil service from top to down needs reforming. And the Vickers report that was put in after the financial crisis to stop it happening has never been implemented. Is this the man to deliver that? And that's where I think post-November the 1st, the Brexit Party has a major role to play as well, because this guy's not conservative, he's liberal.
Well, and he's not a radical. Tim, thank you very much indeed. And Tim, they're, lukewarm about Boris's appointments, and he's not the only one. One or two other. Mary earlier picked up on the fact that she was very surprised there were 19 Remainers in the cabinet. Are we heading towards a general election? Back to the point, and I'm going to go to Carl in Poole in Dorset. Carl, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, my view is that whilst Corbyn is weak, this will obviously benefit Boris, but it will also benefit a Remain alliance, which I'm in favour of, because I think many people that were previously Labour supporters would be very attracted by a Remain alliance.
So the Remain alliance is going to be the Green Party, the Liberal Democrats, some of the nationalist parties where it's relevant.
Yeah.
But the Remain alliance only really is potent, Carl, if it includes the Labour Party.
Well, yeah, but whilst Corbyn is very, very weak and people are disillusioned, I think many people may well come across, people that feel very strongly that this no Brexit scenario is an absolute shocker, which it is. And I'm most concerned about your part in this, Nigel, who many of us believe that you're actually working for Trump in order to deliver us to the Americans.
Oh, Carl, grow up, Carl, for God's sake.
66 million English-speaking people to buy their hormone-fed beef, antibiotic, pork, chlorinated chicken.
You can buy, Carl, you can buy...
the NHS.
Carl, hang on. With the right labelling, you can buy what the hell you like. I was in the States last week. I ate loads of chicken. I'm feeling okay. But if I want chlorinated food, I can go to the local supermarket and buy a salad bag, because that's been chlorine treated too.
Well, I would invite any of your listeners, Nigel, just to go onto Google and look for links.
That's always a good place to go, isn't it? Yeah, that's always a good place to go.
And they will be shocked. This whole brand Farage thing set up by banks in 2015 is getting ridiculous. And I think many people are going to come to realise just how toxic this is. And I can well imagine the day after
should we
Brexit,
boycott America? Should we have a trade embargo on America?
Where you'll stay.
You really hate America, Carl, don't you? And a lot of European unions do.
I love America, but I don't want to buy their dodgy gear.
You haven't got to. You haven't got to. You haven't got to buy it. You can choose. You can go vegan, Carl. You can do whatever you like. I'm a great believer in consumer choice, a great believer that things should be labelled correctly and properly. But I put it to you, Carl, that your Remain alliance doesn't go anywhere unless Labour join it. Thank you. I'm going to speak to Kelly, who's calling from Queensland in Australia. Hi, Kelly.
Yes, good evening, Nigel.
Hi there. So, we could be headed towards a general election. You, of course, have just had one in Australia, which produced which produced a shock result.
Yes.
With the more Conservative Party winning when no one thought they would, and I'm going to be in Sydney actually in a couple of weeks. How do you see things over here, Kelly?
Okay, well, a couple of things. I think Boris has really got to take advantage of the fact that Jeremy is in charge at the moment of the Labour Party. It's going to be his first and major opportunity to take over with a big majority, provided he gets into some sort of partnership with yourself. Now, if that happens, I'm sure that they will get in, or yourself and him will get in, one of the main reasons I left the UK was the involvement with Europe. And I'll be honest, I was a Labour supporter all my life before that. I certainly changed viewpoints since then. I also feel fairly strongly that if whoever gets in, if they wanted a vocal voice to give them command up in the north of England, Geoffrey Boycott would be so suitable for that purpose, as far as Brexit is concerned.
Dear old Geoffrey. He's getting on a little bit now, Geoffrey, but he's never...
Yes, but he's still got his faculties, and that's all that matters. His voice is important.
He's never afraid to give an opinion, that's for certain. And by the way, I'm actually rather friendly with him, but he's had a bit of an operation late. He's recovering.
Yes, I know. I saw a show a couple of weeks ago which depicted that.
Yeah, I wish him well.
A little bit further. My wife is actually Romanian, but she is probably one of your biggest fans. She just loves your show. We watch it all the time. We listen to it all the time, even at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Well, thank you, Ken. That's absolutely marvellous. And thank you for the call. And by the way, as somebody who was a Labour supporter before he moved across to Australia, would you vote for Jeremy Corbyn in a general election?
Absolutely not. I would definitely vote for Boris, provided he's got you backing him in some form and way.
OK, terrific. Kelly, great stuff, great call, thank you. And by the way, I've had a lot of callers today saying how bad Jeremy Corbyn is. You know, he's been called a terrorist-supporting Marxist. If somebody out there actually wants to defend Jeremy Corbyn and tell me that actually Corbyn's call for a general election, what he'll do is what he did in 2017. Get on the campaign trail and surprise everybody. Please do. We'll take your call. Of course we will. 0345 6060 973. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, and it's 11:45.
Coming up at 12 on LBC, Majid Nawaz.
Boris Johnson has set up a war cabinet to deliver Brexit by any means necessary. On October the 31st, is there any way now to avoid a no-deal scenario?
Majid Nawaz on LBC.
Is 2019 the most confusing year ever? Fake lips, speaking fake news, eating fake meat. Let's put it to a vote. After vote, after vote. But are we being listened to by our home devices?
No.
They don't have the answer. Get past the confusion with the Confused.com Beat Your Renewal Quote guarantee. If you can't beat your renewal quote, you get the difference plus £20. Don't be confused. Be Confused.com. T's and C's online, single annual policies only.
Thomas Edison. He's months away from lighting up the world.
The man who controls electricity.
Westinghouse is placing a bid.
Edison Electric, it has to be. Can change the whole world. Automation, transportation, communication, the future. Benedict Cumberbatch. Vultures in every venture. Gotta keep them away. Michael Shannon.
I have the better system.
Nicholas Hoult.
Nikola Tesla. I fix problems for idiots. There's never going to be anything named Tesla again.
And Tom Holland.
His current kills people.
Only because you said it would.
The Current War in cinemas now.
Football is back on Sky Sports. With our total football offer, you get all our football for just £18 extra a month. Absolutely amazing! Sky Sports has more live games than ever before and more of the biggest fixtures. That means more passion, more drama, more glory. All for just £18 extra a month. And it's live! Search by Sky Sports. Sky Sports Football and Premier League, £18 a month for 18 months. Requires Sky TV. Prices may change during this period. Offer ends September 26th.
People say you get what you pay for. We disagree. The Peugeot 208 Signature, loaded with features from touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto to parking sensors and 16-inch alloys. At £199 a month with £199 initial rental, you really don't get what you pay for. You get a lot more. The Peugeot 208 Signature. All that's missing is your signature. Peugeot Motor Company PLC, a credit broker, not a lender, will introduce you to PSA Finance UK Limited. Personal finance lease, 36 months at £199, 18 plus. Guarantee may be required. Terms, eligibility and return conditions apply. You will not own the car.
William, Pamela and Anthony were sold investments by banks and ended up losing money. Luckily, they contacted the financial claims experts at Goodwin Barrett and were able to claim back a total of £65,500. At Goodwin Barrett, we may be able to help you too. If you've lost money on an investment sold by a bank, even if you no longer have the investment or the paperwork, just text SOLD to 66777 for a free assessment on how much you could be owed. Text SOLD to 66777 and we'll call you back.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Jeremy Corbyn says we deserve a general election. It looks in many ways like the Tory party are on an election footing. Though, have to say this, Dominic Cummings did meet with the Tory staffers at the end of last week and told them there is no chance of a general election before the 31st of October. That's what he said, but hey, who knows, with all the moving parts we've got in British politics right at this moment in time. Maybe, if they can get Brexit delivered, they'll have a general election towards the end of this year. I wonder whether they can actually get Brexit done without having a general election. We will see. MPs will not want an election, says Heather from Windsor. At least a third will probably lose their seats. Well, that's possibly true. I'll answer your question, Nigel, if you can answer this. Did we deserve a general election when Gordon Brown took over? Well, no, because our system doesn't actually say that we have to have one, and we don't vote in a presidential style in this country. I am saying that Boris, I think, is going to be very, very tempted to go for a general election because of the weakness and current popularity rating of Jeremy Corbyn. It just all depends where Brexit is. Malcolm is calling from Bodmin. Good morning, Malcolm.
Hello, Nigel. A couple of thoughts, Nigel.
Yeah.
And then a question for you. My thoughts are, I don't think that Jeremy Corbyn wants a general election because I think he wants Brexit as much as you. I think that if there is a general election, that could be scuppered by one means or another. I think Boris Johnson is making all the right noises, but I'm wondering whether he at all wants a no-deal Brexit, Nigel, because he had the two letters or columns written out. He submitted one of them. Then my question, Nigel, to you is it possible for either the British Supreme Court, I mean, this relates to Cox's point that Boris could take us out regardless of anything else. Is it not possible for the British Supreme Court or the European Court, which in a sense is there to protect countries from their own governments in large part, is it not possible for either the British Supreme Court or the European Court to stop a no-deal Brexit without the express vote or wish of the British Parliament, Nigel?
Malcolm, the answer is no one knows. And, you know, we live in this system. We have an unwritten constitution. Things are not codified in this country, perhaps in a way they are in other countries. And that makes answering any of this difficult. You know, Geoffrey Cox is giving a legal opinion, but it doesn't necessarily remain. Nicola Soames says we will find a way in Parliament of unpicking a no-deal Brexit. And the truth is, Malcolm, none of us actually know. Could the European Court interfere in this? I cannot see. European Court of Justice. No, the European Court of Justice couldn't interfere because, you know, because Article 50 under European law allows us to leave at the end of 2 years with no deal. So I don't think the European courts, Malcolm, could interfere in this at all. As for
what about the meaningful vote issue? Because all of this is still related to the meaningful vote.
Well, I know, and yet against that, we've got the fact that it's in legislation, and you know, all precedent says, and this is what Geoffrey Cox is saying, that it's only the government, the executive, that can change the existing law. I suspect, Malcolm, my view is that in strictly legal terms, we probably can simply just leave with no deal because the law is where it is. But in practical terms, I think if it appeared that the Conservative Party was collapsing around his ears, and that there was widespread global condemnation of what he was doing without parliamentary support, that I suspect in practical terms Boris would back down, Malcolm.
Yeah. I mean, it's, Nigel, for me, with Boris, it's all about the Premiership, his legacy. I mean, this could really go pear-shaped for him.
Well, it went pear-shaped for David Cameron, and it went pear-shaped for Theresa May. So, you know, this is a very difficult... It's the most contentious, most difficult political issue, but it is, Malcolm, the defining issue of our times, isn't it?
But did you... I mean, Nigel, if I go back to your actual question, sorry about the distraction, do you think Corbyn really wants an election? I mean... Everybody knows he wants Brexit.
I suspect that he probably doesn't really want a general election, but it's been their position for some time, and what else can he say? Malcolm, I'm going to move on. I'm going to speak to Chris in Colchester. Chris, good morning to you.
Morning. I just wondered what would happen to the deadline of 31st of October if election was called.
Well, this is an interesting one, Chris, isn't it? So if a general election was called and the normal 6-week period, 7 sometimes, but let's say a 6-week period, if the general election was called over the date of the 31st of October, then we would leave with no, in theory, we would leave with no deal in the middle of the election campaign.
Right.
And Dominic Greaves says that would be absolutely outrageous to behave like that. And some of the constitutionalists say, well, actually, under our legal system, that would be allowed. And Alex Dean, who's with me earlier, says absolutely it's going to happen. But then people like Alex Dean, not Alex himself, Chris, but people like Alex Dean were telling me, don't worry, Nigel, Theresa May will deliver Brexit. So I mean, what do you think, Chris? Do you think it's reasonable that the government should be able to simply take us out despite what anybody else says, including Parliament?
Yeah, because it was already in law. But what I think will happen is Boris will try and resurrect this the deal. He'll change the name of the backstop to the front stop or something, and then try and get it through Parliament, and then it won't go through. He'll blame Corbyn, and then he could call a general election. Or if it looks like we're not going to leave without, if it looks like it's going to get to the deadline, I think Corbyn will call a vote of no confidence then.
Yes,
and that would make a general election, wouldn't it? Because I think it's actually complicated, Chris, because of this. Goodness knows why Cameron and Clegg brought in this fixed-term Parliaments Act. But what would happen if a government loses a motion of confidence? They have 14 days to re-establish themselves, and that is one means in which a general election happens. Chris, frankly, it's anybody's guess. Thank you. Dennis is a first-time caller from Islington. Good morning, Dennis.
Good morning.
So, do we deserve a general election?
Well, of course we do, yeah.
Go on, tell me why.
Well, the parliamentary members don't. There aren't enough. Boris Johnson doesn't have enough seats, with majority, to actually deliver a Brexit.
Unless, of course, Dennis, he just ignores Parliament and sticks with the existing legislation. But look, I get the point. He doesn't have a working majority for anything, does he, really?
Well, he doesn't have a working majority. In fact, it's not even called a working majority, is it? The working majority is if he had a majority, but it's with the DUP.
It's with the DUP, and it's a majority of about 2 at the moment.
And so it's with the by-election to look out for is the one on the Brecon on August the 1st. Yeah, there
is a by-election this Thursday, which could alter the numbers, right. Dennis. That's absolutely true.
That would cut Boris's so-called working majority to what? How many numbers? You tell me.
Somewhere between 0 and 1, I think. After if they were to lose Brecon, but none of us know, Dennis, what will happen in Brecon on Thursday, and I'm not going to speculate on that now, given the proximity of that election. But Dennis, so when should Boris call this election to get his majority? Before he delivers Brexit, or afterwards?
I don't know.
No, nor do I. It's very difficult.
Well, what about? I was honestly asking you a question. What's the difference between an electroteer and a clipper?
Sorry?
What's the difference between an electroteer and a clipper?
Got a Brexiteer and I don't know, tell me.
An electroteer and a clipper. No, that's a question for you.
I don't know the answer to it, Dennis. What is it?
You don't know the answer?
No.
Well, you used to be mates with Bob Crow, right?
I did know Bob Crow, and I thought a lot of him as a person, actually.
Ah, right, okay, right, yeah. So go on. Divulge on your relationship with Bob Crow.
No, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to let you go, Dennis. John from Weybridge, I've got a minute for you. Good morning. Do we deserve a general election?
Quickly, then. Yes, I think we deserve a general election because things have changed so much in the last 3 years that even you are in completely uncharted territory from what you thought you were 3 years ago. So everybody really needs a fresh go at it. And that's why I think we need to have a general election as soon as possible.
Do you think, John, a general election would deliver a decisive result?
Yes, I do, because I think there's been people know so much more now than they did 3 years ago that I think...
You sound like a Remainer, John.
Well, I am basically a Remainer, because when you look at the map, I can see that we're part of Europe.
So would you accept the result of a general election in which the Leave parties won? Would you accept a second referendum, John, in which Leave won?
Yes, I would, if it was decisive, because I think...
Well, Joe Swinson wouldn't. Joe Swinson wouldn't.
You yourself said at one time that if the result was very marginal...
Oh, John. I just wish you people would respect democracy more. But it's Sunday morning, and we'll leave it there. You've been listening to The Nigel Farage Show. I'm back tomorrow at 6. Coming up at 3 o'clock this afternoon, it's Aisha Hazarika. But up next, it's Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel. Coming up, a 10-year-old boy with special needs who complained of bullying was forced by staff to listen to classmates listing the reasons they didn't like him and had to write these on a hand-drawn poster that was then stuck on his classroom wall. Are we failing our special needs children? Before that, new Home Secretary Priti Patel has promised an Australian-style point system for immigration. But does it work? But first, Boris Johnson has set up a war cabinet to deliver Brexit by any means necessary, and that's by Halloween, on the 31st of October. Is there any way now to avoid a no-deal scenario at this stage?
On your radio, on Global Player, and...
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 12 o'clock, the Prime Minister's father, Stanley Johnson, has told LBC his son is solid as a rock in his resolve to deliver a no-deal Brexit if the European Union refuses to renegotiate.
It seems to me just a matter of stubbornness on the part of Mr. Juncker and Mr. Barnier at the moment. It's almost as though pride is involved. It's like a First World War situation. Both sides are armed, and in the end, we're going to have a war by accident.
This afternoon, the Chancellor is releasing millions of pounds in no-deal Brexit spending in what's being dubbed Project No Fear. Sajid Javid says it'll include the UK's biggest ever public information campaign, with leaflet drops to every home in the United Kingdom, reassuring every person and business in the event of the European Union refusing to renegotiate the withdrawal agreement. Brexit Party Chairman Richard Tice has told LBC he welcomes the fresh momentum of Boris Johnson's government.
People don't believe these gloomy forecasters by lots and lots of economists, the consensus, who said there would be a huge recession. The truth is that preparations for no deal are more extensive than the previous government, made out.
In other headlines this hour, police in Cyprus have arrested a British woman who told officers she'd been raped. The 19-year-old is now facing a charge of being a public nuisance. Earlier this month, 7 teenagers from Israel held over the alleged attack in Ayia Napa have now been released. There are fears of further violence in Hong Kong, where pro-democracy protests have been held for several weekends. Yesterday, police and demonstrators clashed again with officers firing tear gas into crowds during a banned march. One of those protesters was Joshua Wong. He's told LBC the police were merciless.
Police used pepper spray, baton, and even bullet fire on peaceful activists inside the train station. That's what we experienced in the past 2 weeks.
England's chief medical officer says poor people need to be able to afford healthy foods to deal with obesity. Dame Sally Davis adds, we have to be honest, not pretend people aren't overweight. A cyclist from Colombia is expected to become the youngest winner of the Tour de France for more than a century this afternoon. 22-year-old Egan Bernal has the yellow jersey heading into the final stage. Defending champion Geraint Thomas is expected to finish second. Actress Russi Taylor, the voice of Minnie Mouse for more than 30 years, has died at the age of 75. She was married to Wayne Allwine, who was the voice of Mickey Mouse since 1977, until his death in 2009. LBC weather. Heavy rain across Northern Ireland, southwest Scotland, North Wales, northwest England, the Midlands and East Anglia. Dry elsewhere, a high of 23 degrees. From Global's newsroom, for LBC, I'm Philip Chrysikos.
The Cadbury Flake McFlurry is here at McDonald's. So break out your short shorts because rain or shine, summer has officially begun. Soft dairy ice cream swirled with Cadbury Flake chocolate pieces and delicious chocolatey or raspberry sauce. Only 99p for mini and $1.39 for regular. After 10:30am. Price may vary, subject to availability.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Majid Nawaz.
Good afternoon, it's Majid Nawaz here on LBC. We're going to move over the course of the next hour to Priti Patel's intervention today on the immigration debate, calling for an Australian-style points system. I'll be telling you a bit about what that means and asking the question whether or not it works. But first up, discussing Boris Johnson, because who would have thunk it? We have a hard Brexit supporting Conservative Prime Minister quoting Malcolm X. The phrase "by any means necessary," used by the civil rights icon Malcolm X in reference to achieving African-American emancipation by any means necessary. Of course, that famous poster of Malcolm X peering out of his window with a rifle by his side and the quote "by any means necessary" pasted underneath it. It is worthwhile mentioning, of course, that Malcolm X went on the Muslim pilgrimage to Saudi Arabia, returned as Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz, and denounced his previously militant views. And yet here we are with a Conservative Prime Minister supporting a no-deal Brexit, suggesting that this country will Brexit with no deal by hook or by crook, by any means necessary. And what that, I suppose, leaves us is the question as to whether or not anyone else can do anything about it. Michael Gove, who has been appointed as enforcer-in-chief inside Downing Street alongside Dominic Cummings. Michael Gove has also written a column today saying Britain must be prepared for a no-deal scenario. Now, brainstorming if there is any way indeed possible for a no-deal alliance, cross-party alliance to prevent a no-deal scenario, I'm going to tell you that I think it's looking increasingly unlikely. I think that actually, if this government holds its nerve, and that's the big assumption based upon the rest of what I'm going to say, if this government decides to go out with no deal, there is probably nothing anyone else can do about it. Let's go through some of the scenarios. A motion of no confidence in the government could be passed, but that would require a certain number of MPs to defect from the Conservative Party to support the no-deal alliance against Boris Johnson. He currently has a majority of 2. If there were to be a motion of no confidence, the no-deal alliance would include all the rest of the Labour Party, the Lib Dems, the SNP, whoever else is in Parliament, but it would still require some Conservatives to defect, and that would the calculation going on in their minds for such a scenario to unfold would be the following. First of all, okay, do we prefer losing control of the status quo and the narrative and handing it to the opposition, who then call a motion of no confidence and then go into the general election with the Conservatives on the back foot? That's question number one. If we do, we end up with a Corbyn government. So those Conservative MPs that would defect to support that motion would have that at the forefront of their minds. The second thing, and this is perhaps an even more important one, is that no such motion could be put forward until Parliament reconvenes after the conference season. Of course, the problem there is, even if they were to win, even if the Conservative MPs that were to defect from the Conservative Party to support a no-deal alliance, even if they were to succeed, there wouldn't be enough time to call a general election before, and then to get the results in and form a new government before the legal deadline for Brexit passes. And so what would be the point? Now, if you're a Conservative MP and let's say you despise no deal, but if you're going to bring down your own government, risk the prospect of a Corbyn-led government and still end up with no deal because you don't have enough time to call a general election, get the results in, form a government before the Brexit deadline passes, why on earth would you defect and vote against your government, considering all of that? And so it's looking very bleak. As it is, all Mr. Johnson needs to do is sit on his hands and sing la la la, put his fingers in his ears, I can't hear you, no deal Brexit's going to happen. That's all he needs to do. Like the children that just sit there with their fingers in the ears, close their eyes and then pretend they can't listen, they can't hear anything you're saying. La 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 la. That's it. He's just going to sit there. And then Brexit will happen anyway because it's enshrined into law for the 31st of October. So what I suspect Boris Johnson is hoping for is for Brussels to blink. And if Brussels does blink, God knows what they could offer that they haven't already offered. Because, of course, there isn't a solution to the Northern Ireland backstop question. There simply isn't one. And as I was saying yesterday on my show, it kind of makes you desperately wish that magic was real, in the hope that Boris Johnson does indeed have a rabbit in that hat that he's going to pull out at any moment and say, "Ha, see? Oh, you little faith. Here's my rabbit. I had it all along and you didn't believe me because I was a trained magician and I actually have the